no more than 2 showers a week. I never expected that, after 20 years of marriage, my husband and I would end up arguing so fiercely over something as seemingly simple as how often I can take a shower. Yet here I am, lying in bed on a Saturday evening, replaying the events of the last couple of months and wondering how we got to this point. We've been through our fair share of ups and downs, financial stress, parenting troubles, career changes. But this latest conflict feels especially absurd. At the same time, it's taking a genuine toll on my mental health, and I need to figure out a solution that won't tear our family apart. My husband and I met in college, back when he was still figuring out his major. Even then, he was always a bit of an unconventional thinker. On the surface, he was this brilliant, quiet computer whiz who could crack codes or debug a program in the blink of an eye. But under that serious exterior, he was also a whirlwind of curious ideas. He'd get fixated on certain topics, whether it was ancient civilizations, alien life, or the possibility of time travel, and dig into them for weeks. I found it endearing. He was never boring, that's for sure. While other people stuck to mainstream media, he'd be nose-deep in obscure conspiracy theories, scientific journals, or everything in between. It seemed like every day he had a new fact or theory to share. We got married right after graduation. We were best friends, and it felt like a natural step. Over the years, I saw him jump from one obsession to another, but I never begrudged him that. His mind, as chaotic as it could be, was also a wellspring of creativity. He's the type who gets up in the middle of the night to scribble an idea in a notebook, because he's convinced he's just solved some unsolvable puzzle. Sometimes I found it hilarious. Sometimes I found it overwhelming. Still, it was part of who he was, and I loved him for it. For 2 decades we built a life together that felt solid. We have children, wonderful kids who each have their own set of quirks, clearly inherited from their father's vibrant personality and maybe from my more even-keeled nature. My husband's job as a computer programmer gives him a flexible schedule, often allowing him to work from home. It's a blessing for family time, though it also means he can bury himself in rabbit holes of research whenever he pleases. Now, don't get me wrong, we've certainly had arguments in the past. Marriage is no fairy tale. We fought over finances, in-laws, house chores, all the usual suspects. But typically, we resolve things through compromise. I'm the more practical one. He's the more visionary, and we meet somewhere in the middle. But this water obsession, this is a whole new level. It started about 2 months ago, and it took me completely by surprise. I remember the day it began. He was at his computer, reading something about climate change and water scarcity. He called me over to look at some charts about how the global water supply is under threat. At first, I simply nodded along. I care about the environment too. I recycle, I try to minimize waste. I believe in reducing our carbon footprint. But my husband took it to another extreme. Within days he had bought a high-end water filtration system and installed it under the kitchen sink. I didn't mind that part at all. The water tasted crisp and clean, and I actually loved how we no longer had to buy bottled water for guests. Yet, once the filter was in place, his concerns escalated. He began tracking our water usage meticulously, measuring how much laundry we did, how many dishes piled up, how long the kids spent brushing their teeth. I chalked this up to another short-lived phase. He'd get fascinated, then move on to something else. But I soon learned it wasn't going to be that simple. One evening, as I was finishing up a late dinner, he announced that we needed to cut our shower frequency to conserve water. He quoted statistics about how many gallons per shower we were wasting, and how it was ethically wrong to use so much when people around the world lack access to clean water. In principle, I agreed we should be mindful, but then he said something that really took me aback. We could only shower twice a week from now on. I stared at him, waiting for a laugh or a wink, but his face was dead serious. "You're joking, right?" I asked. He shook his head. "I've done the calculations," he said. "If each of us reduces to 2 showers a week, we cut our water usage by nearly half. Think about the planet. We can set an example for our kids." I tried to argue that daily showers were my routine, especially because I like to feel fresh before going to bed. He insisted I should just adapt. At first, I humored him, figuring this new rule would blow over in a week or two. I thought maybe if I just let him have his say, he'd find a new fascination, like solar panels or electric cars, and pivot away from scrutinizing my hygiene habits. But that didn't happen. Instead, he became increasingly vigilant, timing how long the water ran if I decided to ignore him and shower daily anyway. In the early stages, we argued, but not too severely. I told him he was crossing a line by policing how often I could bathe, and he insisted it was for the greater good. Then one day, about a month ago, I found out just how determined he was to enforce this. I was in the shower, enjoying the hot water, when suddenly it turned ice cold. At first, I thought it was a typical hot water heater glitch, but then it happened again the next night. After the third time, I marched downstairs in my bathrobe, dripping water, and demanded an explanation. He admitted he was turning off the hot water valve himself. I was furious. We'd had arguments before, but never had he taken such a direct, controlling action. I pleaded with him, telling him he needed to trust me to make my own decisions about hygiene. He said he did trust me, but he also felt compelled to step in because my daily showers were harming the planet. The tension between us became palpable. We tried to discuss it calmly, but every conversation circled back to the same point. He wanted me to cut down to 2 showers a week, and I refused. Feeling trapped, I started getting creative. I tried showering at odd times, when he was out running errands. Sometimes that worked, but if he suspected what I was doing, he'd time me, or pretend to leave the house but stay nearby, waiting to see if I'd attempt a sneaky shower. It was infuriating. I even tried going to the gym for an evening workout, just so I could shower there. But with the kids and my own work, it wasn't sustainable. I'd be rushing to gather my toiletries, drive to the gym, shower, then drive back, all to appease an irrational rule. Meanwhile, I kept hoping he'd drop this fixation. But he didn't. The conflict escalated. Whenever I tried to talk sense into him, he'd produce more articles, more videos, more statso. He claimed that if we all limit our water usage, we can make a tangible difference. That's not wrong. In practice, controlling my shower schedule felt manipulative. I started to question if this was just about water, or if there was some underlying psychological issue, maybe a need for control or an unresolved anxiety. After all, he is prone to conspiratorial thinking, and can get carried away. The strain seeped into the rest of our lives. Our children noticed the tension. They asked me why Dad was so upset about the shower. They asked Dad why Mom was sneaking around to bathe. I hated that they had to see us in such a petty power struggle. As a married couple of 20 years, we always tried to maintain respect and unity in front of the kids. Now though, they were witnessing arguments nearly every other day. I tried to keep my tone calm around them, but the frustration built inside me like a pressure cooker. One evening, after the kids went to bed, we sat down for what I hoped would be a serious heart-to-heart talk. I wanted to find a middle ground. I acknowledged his environmental concerns, offered to shorten my showers, or maybe skip a day occasionally, but I refused to cap it at just 2 a week. I told him how it affected my comfort, my mood, even my self-esteem. Oh, but he wants to feel dirty or restricted in their own home. I proposed, for instance, that if I take shorter showers daily, it might use the same overall amount of water as 2 long showers a week. But he was adamant, citing more complicated calculations about water usage per day, total household consumption, and how our habits must fundamentally change. I asked him why he was zeroing in on showers specifically, when there are so many other ways to conserve water or protect the environment. Collecting rainwater for gardening, turning off the faucet while brushing teeth, installing low-flow shower heads or toilets, etc. We already do some of those things, but if he wants to ramp up environmental measures, there's a whole world of possibilities. Why focus on controlling my shower frequency? He argued that showers are one of the biggest daily water expenses for modern households, and that by limiting them severely, we can make a bold statement. We parted that conversation with no resolution. How? He said he understood my discomfort, but hoped I would see the bigger picture. I said I recognized the importance of water conservation, but needed him to see I am an autonomous adult who can decide when to bathe. We ended the night in separate rooms, something that very rarely happened in our 2 decades of marriage. I confided in my sister about the situation. She was shocked and told me I had every right to put my foot down. She asked if he'd been under extra stress at work, or if something else might be fueling this extreme stance. I couldn't pinpoint anything. As far as I knew, he was performing well at his job. No major deadlines were looming. He just seemed convinced that drastically cutting down on water usage was our moral imperative. Still, I tried to be patient. I tried to follow his rules for a week, just to show I was willing to compromise. That meant I took only 2 showers, a Monday night and a Friday morning. It felt dreadful. By Wednesday, I was so uncomfortable that I was sneaking quick sponge baths at the sink, using a minimal trickle of water, feeling guilty for doing even that. By Thursday, my hair felt greasy, and I felt less confident heading into work. I know not everyone showers daily, but for me, it's an ingrained ritual. It's how I reset at the end of the day, washing away stress and literal dirt. By the time Friday rolled around, I was practically counting down the hours until I could get in the shower. That was the week I decided I couldn't do this long term. The final straw came a few nights ago. I'd already had 2 showers that week, and it was only Thursday, but I felt gross, exhausted, and I just wanted a quick rinse before bed. I confronted him directly, warning him not to mess with the water heater. "I'm taking a shower," I said. "Please, don't turn off the hot water. I need this soon." He just pursed his lips, saying I was being rash, and that I should wait until Sunday to keep within his limit, but I ignored him and marched straight to the bathroom. 2 minutes in, the water went from steamy to frigid. My body seized in shock. I banged on the shower wall, cursing under my breath. Couldn't believe he'd actually done it. Again, I hopped out, grabbed my towel, and stomped downstairs. There he was, by the water heater, looking stern, as if he was some hero of the environment. In that moment, I completely lost my composure. I shouted at him that this was the dumbest, most controlling thing he had ever done. I could feel tears of frustration welling up, but I refused to break down in front of him. He tried to calm me down, repeating the same arguments about how we have a moral responsibility to save water. I fired back, telling him how humiliating it was to be treated like a child who couldn't make responsible choices. I reminded him we've been married for 2 decades, raised children together, and this was not how partners should treat each other. I also brought up how our kids were witnessing his controlling behavior, which worried me deeply. What kind of example did that set? Then I said something I'd been thinking for weeks, but never dared to voice. "I'm moving out if you don't stop this." I said it loudly, maybe a bit dramatically, but it was the truth. I told him I'd pack my bags and go stay with my parents if he couldn't respect my right to shower as I see fit. It wasn't an empty threat either. My parents live a couple of hours away, and though it would be incredibly disruptive to uproot the kids, I was reaching the end of my rope. He stared at me, stunned, as if he never imagined I would go that far. Honestly, I never imagined I would go that far, either. We've never been the kind of couple to throw around ultimatums. Even in our worst fights, divorce or separation wasn't on the table. But this time, I felt cornered. I no longer felt safe or comfortable in my own home. I was on edge, wondering if I could get a quick shower in without him interfering. That's no way to live. After the dust settled, he tried to apologize for making me upset, but he didn't change his stance on the water usage. His apology felt hollow because it came with the caveat that he still believed in 2 showers a week. Meanwhile, I was left shaking, wrapped in a towel, half clean, half soapy, with the knowledge that this was bigger than a casual disagreement. This was a line in the sand. Later that night we slept in the same bed, but there was a palpable distance between us. I tossed and turned, replaying the evening in my head. I hate conflict, and I hate the idea of leaving him, even temporarily. I love him deeply. He's my partner, my soulmate in many ways. We share decades of memories, from our wedding day to the births of our children, to family vacations. But love alone can't override the fact that I feel violated every time he cuts off the hot water mid-shower. I'm also aware of how it looks from an outside perspective. When I mention it to a close friend or a family member, they're shocked, sometimes half laughing because it sounds so absurd. But, to me, it's not funny. It's my everyday reality. And while divorce isn't an option I'm seriously considering, our relationship has far too strong a foundation to throw it all away over water usage. I'm not sure how long I can keep this up without a genuine resolution. Part of me wonders if we should see a therapist. If he's that concerned about climate change, maybe a professional can help him see that there are healthier, more reasonable ways to channel his environmental anxieties. We can do more recycling, invest in energy-efficient appliances, or even install a gray water system. But forcibly limiting my showers to 2 a week, and physically shutting off the water if I don't comply, is not sustainable or respectful. I've been looking at the bigger picture. I do care about the environment. I know water scarcity is real in many parts of the world, but I also believe that extreme measures at the expense of one's personal well-being, or the well-being of your spouse, aren't the solution. You can be environmentally conscious without policing basic hygiene. In fact, controlling your partner in such a way sets a dangerous precedent. It's not just about water anymore. It's about autonomy, mutual respect, and compromise. Our children's reactions range from confusion to mild embarrassment. They've overheard our arguments, and the older one asked me if everything was okay. I tried to reassure them that Mommy and Daddy just disagree on how best to conserve water, but in my heart I'm worried about how this might affect them long term. Marriage is supposed to be a model for them, showing how two people navigate problems. Right now we're modeling a standoff, with one partner physically enforcing a rule and the other threatening to leave. That's not the lesson I want them to learn. I've considered calling a family meeting, or trying to involve a third party, maybe a trusted mutual friend who can mediate. My concern is that he might feel ambushed or ganged up on. I don't want him to think I'm ridiculing his environmental concerns. I want him to see that there's a middle ground, a place where we can both feel good about our water usage, without me sacrificing daily showers, or him feeling like we're dooming the planet. But so far, every conversation circles back to the same rigid rule: 2 showers a week. Last night, lying in bed, I realized I'm nearing a breaking point. Our affection is still there. We still hold hands sometimes, still share inside jokes, still watch movies together, but there's this constant undercurrent of tension. It bubbles up at random moments. When I mention needing to wash my hair, or when he sees me picking out fresh towels, the result is that I'm on edge, bracing for yet another confrontation. I also worry about potential deeper issues. Is he spiraling into an obsession with climate catastrophes? Has he developed a phobia, or an anxiety disorder that fixates on water? Sometimes, late at night, I wake up and find him browsing environmental forums. He'll talk to me about dire predictions, droughts, mass migrations, wars over water. I'm sympathetic to these concerns, but I don't think the solution is to micromanage our household showers. If he's dealing with anxiety, maybe the real step forward is counseling or therapy, not turning the hot water valve off. This morning I woke up earlier than usual and decided to test the waters. Literally, I tiptoed to the shower, turned it on for just a moment, to see if it would stay hot. Thankfully he was still asleep, so I managed a quick 5-minute shower. It was glorious, yet I felt guilty for sneaking around my own house. That's not how a marriage should function. After I was done, I started making breakfast for the kids, my mood a jumble of relief and shame. When he eventually woke up, I didn't mention my stealth shower, and he didn't ask. It felt like a cold truce, both of us ignoring the elephant in the room. Throughout the day, I kept telling myself, I need to stand my ground. This is not negotiable for me. I wrote down my thoughts, listing out possible compromises: shorter showers, showers every other day, installing a low-flow showerhead, capturing leftover water in a bucket for plants, and so on. I'm willing to do all of that, but I will not adhere to just 2 showers per week, nor tolerate him forcibly cutting off the hot water when I exceed his limit. So, am I going too far by threatening to move out? Maybe. Part of me feels dramatic and wonders if I should just deal with it, or keep trying smaller solutions. Another part knows that sometimes it takes a big statement to jolt a loved one out of an unreasonable stance. If that's the only way to show him I'm serious, truly serious, then perhaps it's necessary. And I do believe that a temporary separation might give him the space to reconsider, while giving me the dignity of daily shower seat. I just wish it hadn't come to this. We've built a life together and I'm not about to let it crumble over water usage. I don't want to pathologize him without evidence, but I do suspect there's a psychological or emotional component to his behavior. It's not normal to enforce such an extreme rule with no compromise. The environment is an enormous issue, and individuals often feel powerless to change the world. Maybe he's latched onto our shower routine because it's something concrete he can control. In a chaotic world, controlling that one variable might give him a sense of security or purpose. But that doesn't justify imposing his will on me. Now, as I'm nearing the end of this very long reflection, I have to decide what I'll do next. My gut tells me to propose couples therapy. See if he's willing to work through these concerns with a professional mediator. If he refuses and remains unyielding, I might follow through on moving out for a week or two, just to clear my head and show him the gravity of the situation. I'd prefer not to do that, but I also need to protect my well-being. Our kids deserve a mother who isn't constantly stressed, and a father who isn't obsessed to the point of sabotaging daily life. If he reads this, I hope he understands it's not a betrayal of our marriage, but a desperate attempt to salvage it. I love him more than anything, but I also love feeling clean and respected in my own home. We can find a balance. Maybe we become the most water-conscious household on the block, installing all sorts of eco-friendly devices and adopting new habits. I'm game for that, but it has to be a partnership, not a dictatorship, and definitely not a scenario where I'm shivering under cold water because my husband decided I've hit my quota. So, yes, this might be the weirdest clash in our 20-year marriage. I never thought shower frequency would be the hill we'd die on. Still, it's not about the showers themselves. It's about boundaries, respect, and the right to personal autonomy. No one should feel policed over their basic hygiene. If I threaten to move out, it's because I have to draw a line somewhere. I sincerely hope it doesn't come to that. With honesty, empathy, and perhaps professional guidance, I believe we can overcome this. But until then, I'll be standing up for my right to a simple, daily shower, something I never dreamed would be considered a luxury in my own home.